Mr. Sullivan.
I know that voice.
I know that voice.
Yeah.
How are you
quite
today?
a week. We had
Tell
a
me.
week. We had a special event for the Game Changers who could make it in Chicago on Thursday. We had 24, which is about 60% right now. I think we're at 40 in the Game Changer group, and they brought 36 other individuals, team members, collaborators. And,
yes, I sent my Stuart was there.
Yep. And what did he say?
He said it was great. It was good to put, like for him, because I come back, I talk about all the things that we talk about and the people. And so it was good for him to, it's good to him to meet everybody and to get a firsthand kind of, experience of what we talk about.
Yeah, I had a really interesting new take on things that, and this kind of, you'll know this yourself because it's one of the special advantages of being a 10 quick start in the Colby system and ADD. Because, you can look at it as a problem, and the ADD thing, you can look at it as a problem, or you can look at it, in certain situations, it's really an advantage. And I want to give you an example. So here I was, this was in the calendar, this event, and I had been really preoccupied with a lot of other projects up until Monday of last week. And so I was had in place certain things for Thursday. I had two speakers. I had Mark Winters, a game and he talked about how the EOS system relates directly to someone who's doing game changing in the entrepreneur. He did a beautiful job. I mean, I sent him a fast filter, which is the short form of the impact filter. And he also showed how if you're going to be a game changer, you should really focus yourself on being a visionary and then have an integrator who actually translates backwards to your base company.
Right.
What you're doing. And that person is really in charge of making sure that the base company is both self-managing but also self-multiplying. And that the visionary can be freed up to go out. And, we had that exercise, Dean, in July, which was called Total Cash Confidence.
Yes.
Ross Thornley, who's very famous already in the game changer community as being the person who speaks last and then sums up what everybody else has said.
Yes.
And he said, when Mark was finished, and he said, well, we have total cash confidence. And we actually did that exercise again in the morning, the Thursday morning. And then he said, well, what Mark is talking about seems like total operational confidence. And I said, that would be a nice feeling. That would be a nice total operational, not only total cash confidence, but total operational confidence in freeing up the entrepreneur. And then in the afternoon, we had Ari Meisel, who spoke for about an hour on optimize, automate, and outsource. He had a 3-step process and gave us some examples of, obviously, of where you can, take any process that's been around for a while and you could probably shorten, knock out steps and everything else. And you could do that throughout your entire organization and probably clean up about 40% of the time that's being utilized right now that really doesn't make any sense anymore. So that's optimized. And then there's activities which humans are doing in your organization which can really be automated now because they're predictably successful if you just follow the steps. And technology is actually better at being predictably recurring than humans are. And then once you've done that, then you can really see who else outside your organization you can actually utilize. Okay. So that's it. That was in place. So I already had those things in place, but I didn't have a zinger.
A zinger.
You always have to have a zinger, And you know where I got it? It was on a Zoom call on Monday. So this would be Monday before the Thursday. And it was with Chip Mock, who's...
Yes, I know Chip, yeah.
Yeah, Chip. And then the other one was Ken Newman. And the third one was Ross Thornley. And it's very interesting. And this is where I want your feedback.
Okay.
And this could be what we talk about today. That halfway through the hour, so we were at about the 30-minute mark, and I was noting that all three of them had said in one way or another that they were operating completely differently 7 months into the game changer than what they thought they were going to be back in April when they started.
Yes.
Things had really opened up for them, and that the role that they were seeing themselves in wasn't so much being a specialist in anything, but actually being an integrator of other people's capabilities. And that was the raw material for my zinger.
And tell me, what was your zinger then?
See, I was hoping you would ask that. If I left a little bit of, if I let a little bit of silence,
tension there. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. You were very, very.
And that's good. We had we didn't set this up ahead of time. Yeah.
You were very amazingly responsive there.
Yes.
So anyway, about 30 years ago, you remember my practice of writing in a journal for 25 years, every day for 25 years.
What do I want?
Yeah. About 8 years in, I started identifying a role for myself, and this is what I wanted in the future. Then in the future, using coaching concepts and techniques, because I had already really gotten very strong as a impact or strategy circle coach by 8 years in. This would be around 86, 87, and 1986. And I came up with a term that had 4 words in it, and the words were total, creative, economic, integrator. So it's a total, creative, economic integrator. And I had talked to Babs about this over the years. We've had a 20-year conversation about this. And she said, you really are the total creative economic integrator. And I said, yeah, but what I'm noticing is the game changers are becoming that. So this is the first time in my, experience of the strategic coach program, the workshop program, that I was seeing that what was happening to people in the game changer was that they were also becoming total creative economic integrators. So what I did was actually create a worksheet out of this, so had the Zoom call on Monday, thought about it overnight. On Tuesday, I actually created the exercise for it, worked back and forth with my main computer artist, and put this into multimedia as well, and we presented it on Thursday. So it was all packaged and sent to Chicago. And can I give you the definitions of the 4 words, and then I'll let you respond?
I wish you would. That would be great.
Okay. So total. So here's the definition of total. You are not restricted by the borders of your business, your industry, or your market. You are, in other words, you have an ability to go beyond the borders of what most people keep. They're kind of prisoners, if you will. They're either a prisoner of their particular type of business, or their particular type of industry, or their particular type of market. And you go beyond that, And the market eventually could be a global market. So And so that's total. And number two, creative, is that you continually take what already exists in your business and you keep taking it apart and reassembling it to produce breakthroughs. So it becomes more productive, even the existing elements through creating. And I'm using Steve Jobs' his notion, what's creativity? He says, well, it's putting stuff together in new ways. And I think it's a good definition because that's really what creative. But it's also, you're not dreaming stuff up. You're actually taking stuff that already exists. You're just
creatively
dreaming up new uses for existing reconfigured things. So that's another sign. So that's number two. Number three is economic, that you're going beyond being total and being creative is actually creating financial multipliers, which can be measured in increased revenues and profits. Okay, and then number three is you're getting so good at the first three that now you're being a catalyst where you can actually pull together 10 times capabilities in the marketplace and create entirely new types of collaboration.
It's so funny. I watched a interview with Jesse Itzler. Do you know who Jesse Itzler is? He's Sarah Blakely's husband, but he's also the guy who he's written a couple of different books, but he also started the Marquis Jet card. Okay, so this was a really interesting thing. He was, before he started Marquis, he was basically, closest way to describe it would probably be like a Steve Sims, a high-level concierge, make things happen kind of thing, right? Create experiences for people. And he was a guest on a private jet, first time ever. And he thought, I would never want to fly commercial again, right? Like if I could do this all the time, this is great. But at that time, the only way to do that was, people would either buy a jet, or NetJets had started out with you could own a fraction of a jet, but also they're very, very expensive, high barrier to entry in it, and wouldn't necessarily appeal to everybody, or the people who would want to fly private but wouldn't want to make that big of an investment in it. And he had this idea of creating a prepaid jet card that people could buy a block of 25 hours instead of buying a fraction of the jet. And he didn't know anything about the jet industry, didn't know anything about how that worked, but he knew some celebrities, and he knew that they would be the kind of people who would be into this. And he went and pitched the idea to NetJets, who rejected it initially, said, no, we're not going to do that. And then he went to some of the celebrities and he got letters and kind of pre-agreements from them that they would definitely, basically the letter said, I wouldn't buy a fraction of a jet, but I would definitely buy 25 hours at a time. Right. I would definitely do that if you offered it. And he had, there's basically letters of intent from some of them, and went back to NetJets, and they finally agreed to do a little pilot program with him. And so he just started this idea, and ultimately built it up and then sold it back to NetJets for hundreds of millions of dollars. I was pretty I thought that that's a pretty interesting, it's actually kind of a good example of what you're what you're talking about here.
I was just checking off my 4 boxes as you were describing. And one of the things I've discovered is, because I have this framework now, we had a really great cocktail party on the Wednesday night before the all-day session on Thursday. So we were right on Michigan Avenue.
Yes.
So where Millennium Park is in Chicago, across the street is the main Chicago Athletic Club. And it's just a beehive of different kinds of party venues at nighttime. I mean, they have gyms there, but by far the majority of their activities is actually people who meet there. They have rooms, they have party rooms. And we just had a terrific party room, and, about half, probably out of the 24 who came the next day, I think we probably had about 16 of them who were there that night and their teams. So we had probably 40, 45, 50 people there. And the first three game changers who walked in the room, I had this model. I hadn't given it yet, so it was to be unveiled the next morning, but I just talked them through it. And with each of the game changers, I could check off the 4 boxes of total, creative, economic, integrator, and they learned something in the process by me doing that. They said, I hadn't seen it that way. I hadn't seen it that way.
Yeah.
And so the next day we went through it, and it just worked so great because the teams were there, and a lot of the team members who've kind of been in a position where their entrepreneur comes back from 10 times or comes back from the game changer, and it's like shields up. Inbound, there's like inbound things that are going to destroy the order and the harmony that we've established. And now he's bringing back kryptonite to destroy the order. Right. And all of a sudden they said, we kind of got what this is all about.
Yes.
So they had a new structure, and Steve Krein brought his sister and his main person from what he's doing. And they had all sorts of ideas, and they identified all sorts of ways in which Steve was doing total creative economic integrators in ways that he didn't even see. So it was really a real breakthrough. And after the podcast today, I'll just send you through the worksheet so you can.
I would love that. Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah. And so anyway, that was really terrific for me. And yesterday I had lunch with a really, really top-notch litigation lawyer here in the city who's got a great game changer with a massive global reinsurance company. And it's a new process for actually pre-financing litigation processes.
Oh, wow.
And it's really terrific. And I just took him through the form, and he said, this really gives me enormous amounts of confidence about what I'm doing. So he's coming into the game changer in early 2019.
Oh, nice.
And anyway, so really terrific, really terrific week for me. But, it's that ability, and it too, Dean, that because once we're clear about something, we can take action, especially if we have teams.
Yes.
And I was kind of, it was kind of interesting, and I'm sure you experienced this too, that I was kind of experiencing procrastination and getting a handle on my workshop, but I didn't have the zinger. I had to have a zinger. Then once I have my zinger, everything else falls into place.
Right. Yeah, because once you get that's what you can hang everything on. It's the catalyst for conversations. That's good.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because what's been going on for me, as I've been thinking this through, is it's almost like I was having a great conversation with my good friend Ilko in Amsterdam. I don't know if you've met Ilko.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I have a story there.
Uh-huh.
My scorecard that I use, the American Checklist, in which I have a podcast with Mark Young.
Uh-huh.
I tested it for the first time in a Genius Network workshop where Ilko was there.
Uh-huh.
And he was the only non-North American there. You know, he was from Amsterdam.
Yes.
And I went through the whole thing. Everybody graded themselves on the American Checklist scorecard, which people can go to if they go to Google. They can go to the podcast, American Checklist podcast. But I noticed he was kind of perturbed by it, you know, and I said, so I hope, you know, I said, yeah, you never learn less. So we all went around and everybody, you know, said, this is really great and everything. They got around to Ilko and he said, this explains why my entire life I felt like a duck out of water in Amsterdam. He says, I'm actually an American.
He's an American in Amsterdam. Yeah, yeah.
He's an American in Amsterdam. So I saw him. Yeah. He was at Genius Network the previous week. He was at Genius Network, and I reminded of them, and he really remembered it. He said, "No, that was terrific. It gave me a lot of confidence in what I was doing."
Well, he just joined 100K, so you'll see him there. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So
he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Yeah.
So in any event, the conversation
you were talking to him.
Yeah, we were having a conversation very similar to what would be. It was a different word. I mean, we weren't using the language of total economic or total creative economic integrator, but we were talking about being a producer, which is essentially, that's probably a one word that ties what you're saying together in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like the closest thing that is out there is that it's not really, tied to any one thing, you know? And it's, where you're really doing this is the role. That's really what a producer is a game changer who is tying things together, putting things together that maybe otherwise wouldn't.
Is this producer contrasted against consumer?
Yeah, well, producer in the like a creative producer, like a movie producer, a music producer, somebody who we were talking about DJ Khaled, for instance, as a guy who's become very, very popular now. He's not a musician. He's not, he started out as a DJ, but he's moved into being a producer because he has ideas for songs, ideas for things, and he'll put, he hires the creatives to put this together, a bass track for a song, and then he'll call up Justin Bieber and Quavo and say, hey, I got this song, and get them to come and collaborate on it. And he puts the whole thing together and they create these number one hits, out of nothing kind of thing. And I've been observing that and seeing that that story keeps coming up again and again, like, with Jesse Itzler, that with what he did with the Marquis Jet card, putting things together, seeing an opportunity, and putting it all together with no experience, no base experience in the industry, but being a creative.
Uber. It's kind of like, Uber's a good example, Airbnb's a good example, you have all these where you're essentially putting a new medium of communication and cooperation in already existing elements.
Yes,
you've had limousines and taxis for forever.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, I found out that in London, the black cabs go back 350 years, the horse and buggies, the black cabs. So that notion of limousines and that has been around. Carriages and limousines has been around forever.
Yes.
But the beauty is that taking advantage of Cloudlandia, which
Right.
these are Cloudlandia-based businesses.
Yes.
Instead of ownership of a thing, you have ownership of time.
Yes. Ownership of time. Say that again. What do you mean?
Yeah, you own a half hour of Uber time.
I see what you're saying. Yes.
You
right.
own two nights of Airbnb time. You own
Yes,
25 hours of Marquis Jet time. You're owning time.
I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, that's right. So the increment, only what you need. And that's really what, that's kind of an interesting way to look at what, I've been thinking about what my role is in a lot of things. Like as a 10, Quick Start, an idea factory that just constantly, an idea machine able to come up with ideas that have got a lot of specialized knowledge, particular to marketing, a lot of experience and ways of looking at things, and a framework that I kind of hang all of that on. So I can, in a very short period of time, create a executable blueprint for somebody that applies to their business that would have, it's definitely from concentrate, where somebody could in a short period of time with me then have a longer period of time that it takes to actually execute the thing that we created out of nothing.
Yeah.
And so rather than...
Well, it's really interesting. It looks like you're creating out of nothing, but if you were behind the scenes, there's about 20 known factors that you're actually putting together. It's just that it's not visible what you're actually putting together. But it was like I've had this model of the TCEI sitting there for 30 years. I had already identified it 30 years ago. And so my team was saying, well, how did you put that together so quickly? Well, I actually had hundreds of hours of thinking about this over probably, something like a 17 or 18 year period. And, but I just didn't have an application for it. So I never brought it up as a topic.
Yeah. And it's so, I think for me, I've been thinking a lot about that too, that, it feels like now more than ever, it's finally okay to just have that level of contribution. That it's almost so, I've said it before that we kind of, as a society or community of entrepreneurs and stuff, we've almost sort of traditionally kind of lauded or almost fetishized the execution and taking something all the way through, right? Like you gotta fight through, grind through, and get something all the way to completion, when that really now we start to see that, or I'm starting to see that the greatest contributions I've had have been at the start of something, more that somebody else executes out, and that's and to be that's okay to actually build my business around that, to set up a structure that allows me to just do more of that without having to just fully focus on one thing and get it all the way through, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is in the breakthrough blueprint, you're if I can apply the total creative economic integrator to the first of all, the total is, this applies to any kind of entrepreneurial business in the world. Okay. So you've gone outside of business, you've gone outside of industry, and you've gone outside of market. You haven't been constrained by any of those boundaries. Saying, if you want to sell something as easily as possible, as fast as possible, with as little cost and as big a result with any activity in the world. These are the 8 things that you have to pay attention to. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yes.
Then in the creative part of it is that you've simply taken considerations that were already there, but they were not unified. They weren't put into a single structure that were interconnecting. And you've done it in such a way that if you master one level, the next level compounds the value of the first one, and the third one compounds the first 2. Okay, so you've actually been very, very creative. But then in economic, you can put out very, very clear-cut measurements of increased revenue and increased profits, with it. And then you can say, okay, now with this model in place, I can pull together the biggest producers from any kind of industry and put them in the same group together. And they feed each other with their models and everything like that. So you're a catalyst. You're an integrator. And people have told me that they created collaboration simply because they ended up in the same room doing the breakthrough blueprint. That they met each other, and all of a sudden there was a collaboration that came out of that.
Yes.
Because they each got to see what the other one was doing, and they said, "Oh, we can really collaborate." So your model is a perfect example of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Our organizational purpose, like internally, our organizational purpose is we help entrepreneurs make more money. Yeah. And that's kind of everything fits into that idea of a total creative economic integrator as an organization.
I mean, the thing is that in genetic terms, all of us are kind of becoming super enzymes.
Yeah. Super enzymes.
Yeah, enzymes are the factor, the element in the body that actually pulls everything together. They're integrators and knitters. Enzymes actually allow, all the different molecules and all the different, hormones and everything else to work together. Yeah, and the enzymes.
I've been working with Harry Massey. And right. So I went and spent a day with them a couple of weeks ago, and he's really an inventor. I mean, the guy has got some amazing ideas, and it's really, we had some great conversations about this. It's an interesting thing because as a result of the conversations, it's an interesting thing to see him commenting how he feels freedom now, that to be just this inventor and having people, integrators who can run with and maximize something. That's going to be his, because he's got a never-ending flow of ideas like this.
Yeah, well, he needs to have collaborators who can scale it up, because he'll never take the steps to scale himself. He doesn't have that. He needs to, he needs to really plug into someone who's missing what Harry uniquely does. And then this person will have something to actually scale out in the marketplace. There are people who are just great scalers, but they're not the people who come up with the thing to scale. Right. They're not the innovator of something new that can be scaled, but they've mastered scaling. They can scale anything.
Yeah. I had dinner with Joe Stump a couple of weeks ago. He was in town, and we were reflecting back on, there was a really great triad that we had between Joe and me and Terry Hunnefeld, in that we all had different roles, but it was probably that's the peak, performance for all three of us. What we were able to collaborate on together is the highest level of anything any of us had been able to do on our own.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, together was really that was the magic of it. Terry being the integrator and running everything in the business of it, and Joe, of course, as a enroller, and the the great communicator of it. And I would say as the architect.
Just fill in everybody on, because this is sort of inside knowledge.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I forget that we're recording a podcast. I get so caught up in our conversation. So so I started out as a real estate agent and was developing marketing tools and marketing systems for my business that I ended up licensing to other realtors all around me. And then I met up with Joe Stump, and we decided to collaborate together to take this to the bigger market. Joe is 10 years older than me, had at that point already had a $5 million company, had a whole infrastructure of sort of execution and management team. And then over the next 15 years, we took that from 5 million to 20 million, and all three of it. Terry Hunnefeld was the other person who came on a little bit after that to run the business side of it. And we all just completely lived in our unique ability. It was really, I was running the marketing, so I had created all the emails, all the campaigns, everything that we were doing to get people to come to a half-day free workshop, real estate agents. And I wrote the half-day the script for the presentation that we would do. We hired 2 people to go out and do 10 of these workshops a month, and then they would sell people into our 3-day main event, which Joe and I and Terry would go and do the actual 3-day seminar, and then we would sell them into our coaching program.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a great synergy, because everything, they had a whole team. I would get together once a month at the main event, and while Joe was speaking on Monday morning, we'd be Terry and I'd be meeting with the team. We'd have the executive team come. We'd meet with the team, and I would give all the marketing direction. We'd report on everything that was going on, and then I would do I'd go up and speak on the afternoon, and then we'd meet again on Tuesday. And we had this nice little rhythm where, with that little bit of guidance and concentration and me providing the marketing, it was all able to be executed and worked. It worked perfectly. It was a great model. And it was funny how that was really just being in unique ability, Yeah.
Well, the cornerstone, and I think that what has changed in the world is that through the industrial period, if I go back to the 1840s, probably Great Britain 1830s, U.S. 1860s, 1870s, and and then gradually the European countries got into it, and and then it spread. So it's and the base of it is still tremendously there in the world. Factory manufacturing is bigger than it's ever been. A lot of people say, well, you don't do manufacturing. Manufacturing is through the roof. It's manufacturing jobs that have gone down in numbers.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize, but the U.S. is, they say, well, America doesn't manufacture. No, but they are number 2 in the world. They are
Right.
next to China, and productivity per worker, the U.S. is about 10 times what the Chinese are in terms of productivity.
Wow.
Because they've used technology to offset labor. But your role was really defined to your conformity within the industrial system. Right from the bottom to the top, the system only worked because the creation of a factory system, including the head office and everything else, from the day you started, it might be 30 or 35 years before you amortize the cost of everything. And therefore, you couldn't have individualism going around with the game plan. Everybody had to conform.
Right.
Time-wise, you had to conform. Activity-wise, you had to conform. And belief-wise, you had to conform. And so people said, it was so oppressive in the old days. And I said, well, the factory system wasn't as oppressive as starvation.
Well, you got that going for it, right?
No, I mean, there's people saying, the horrible working conditions in the factories. I said, you should have seen the horrible working conditions, the horrible non-working conditions before the factory. This actually gave people income. It actually gave them a chance to feed themselves, house themselves, clothe themselves in a way that never had happened in the world before. So I said, we're not far away from it being mostly dark, cold, and starving. In world affairs, we're a couple of centuries away,
right.
And some parts of the world are just coming out of it right now.
Yeah.
But when you introduce Cloudlandia into the economic scheme, starting, really with the internet, the internet is really the great emergence of Cloudlandia. I mean, you had digital before that, but it was going over landlines and everything. But all of a sudden, we have digital. All of a sudden, and I think this is what's so disruptive about modern society and why it seems so confusing, is that the priority now has switched from you being a conformist to you being a unique ability producer.
Yes.
Being a unique ability producer. And strangely enough, people who are ADD have actually been better at this switch than people who are very concentrated and very, very follow-through-ish. Follow-through. That, if you take in the Colby, it's known that people, they have the statistics now that in terms of income, you have fact finder, you have follow through, you have quick start, and you have implementer in the Colby system. By far, the highest paid people are the quick starts. The quick starts from an income standpoint are off the chart. Next is fact finders. Okay. And then implementers are actually number 3. So implementers are people who can work with their hands. They're demonstrators with their bodies and their hands. And follow-throughs are actually the lowest paid category. If you're intensively a follow-through person. And the sheer contrast between follow-through in column number 2 and quick start in number 3 is extraordinary. It's like 5 to 1. It could be 10 to 1. And I was making a point. It was just a conversation, and I said, everybody talks about inequality of income, inequality of wealth in the United States, because I was in Chicago, and people said, yeah, you've just got this enormous inequality between, families in the United States. And I said, interesting, the inequality between families in the United States is much less than the inequality that actually happens within families. So if you take all the siblings, you take parents and siblings inside of a family, the biggest inequality you're going to find in United States life is what's happening in that family. That one person will be in the stratosphere with income and wealth compared to everybody else in the family. And my feeling is if you did a Colby overlay, it's the quick start in the family who's gone through the roof.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Is that research that that Kathy has done, or is that your observation too?
It's not something. It's not something they want to talk about a lot because it's almost like prejudicial.
Right.
It's also prejudicial, but it's just what people choose to go into. I mean, what your natural instinct is and how the economy is organized. That basically the people who make it up are going to get paid more than the people who make it recur.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because that's interesting. If you think even that's naturally the progression, then, isn't it? It's like you go from a quick start who's making it up to a fact finder passing it on to an integrator as the way. Yeah, because a fact finder would be, well, what would have to happen to make this real, and then being able to pass that on to. Because if an integrator or if an implementer is not a fact finder, they're going to build as made, unless they're your second highest is implementer, right? So
yes, it is. Yeah,
you're a natural. We talked about that. Your natural thing is to have an idea.
And
have an idea and then draw.
And then, So I can pass. The last week's Monday to Thursday transition. It was my quick start that got excited, but it was my implementer. First of all, I had a complete drawing of the exercise. Overnight. I mean, by the time I went to the office, I had it all laid out for my artist, and then she put it into digital form. But here's the thing. I'm a political junkie, and I said. The extraordinary, what I would say almost emotional and psychological meltdown of the mainstream media dealing with Trump has been interesting to watch over the last 2 years, and it'll continue. And I think the reason is that he's a very, very high quick start implementer who's dealing with people who are essentially fact finder follow-throughs. And they're always, they will be dealing the day after tomorrow things that he did the day before yesterday.
Right.
But meanwhile, he's onto something new. As they're catching, 2 days from now, when they're catching up with what he said 2 days ago, he'll be onto something new. And they think they can capture him, but they can't because it's the Roadrunner and the Coyote. He starts every day and he creates something new, and they want to contain him within the process of fact finding. We're going to check on all your facts. So they say, well, this is a lie, this is a lie, this is a lie, but nobody cares because it's something new. That was yesterday's facts. Nobody's really interested in yesterday's facts.
Fake news.
And they'll follow through on something, and they'll dive deep they'll spend 6 months looking into his tax records, and you say, here's what he did 15 years ago. Well, that's
right.
News. That's hardly news. Do you realize that he, had sexual relationships with, all these basically show women and prostitutes and everything else, and Trump's response is, "Yeah, but I paid them. I paid them. They were working women. I paid them. It wasn't like the Kennedys and the Clintons. I wasn't doing it with interns. Interns. These people were offering a service in the marketplace. I paid them for it. Now I'm paying them to keep quiet about it.
Oh man.
No, but the interesting thing about it is that the way the world is working with Claude Landy and the mainland, the relationship right now, is that he's got a set of capabilities that just always keeps him ahead of the news cycle.
Yes. Yeah. So, to go a little bit deeper in this, in your zinger here for the workshop, what
Yeah.
was what was some of the outcome from that? Did anybody have any? Um,
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about it is that you can. So what I do in each of the categories, I put three empty form boxes. So I
okay.
give the definition 1, 2, 3 blank, 1, 2, 3 blank, 1, 2, 3 blank, 1, 2, 3 blank, and then during the day there's note sections around all four boxes, and you kind of say, well, where am I already doing this? Total. Where am I already doing creative, economic, and integrator? And then at the end of the day, I had everybody pick the three most important ways they're doing it. So they're ending up with 12 things. And all of a sudden, they're starting to see the relationship between things that were previously separated in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of seeing that this is really the essence of how they're changing themselves, they're changing their teamwork, they're changing their company, they're changing their market, they're changing their industry, and they're changing they're changing their global stance. Just going back 5 years ago when we had our conversation about what would fascinate and motivate you for the rest of your life, you have gone global.
Right. Yes, that's true, because that was literally the first year, of going.
And you've gone totally outside of the real estate industry.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So that's your total. I mean, you've gone global.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you have your yearly global route that you set up your workshops. But and then you and Joe had gone global with I Love Marketing.
Yes.
Starting about 10 years ago. And that continues onward. And,
yes.
And 90-minute book is,
we've got books from all over the world. We've got people.
And then you have the podcast
mm-hmm.
platform and everything. So I'm just showing you, first of all, that whether you had the model or not, that if you are taking the who, not how route to life that we identified on this podcast series, you will naturally go total, you will naturally go creative, you will naturally have economic multipliers, and you will naturally become a catalyst. But it's useful to know that there's actually a formula for this.
Yeah. And I think what's really giving me the freedom and velocity now, as I wrap my mind around it, is that I don't necessarily have to go and find integrators to build out my own things, like my own organization. It's really that I can contribute my part to an organization that already has integrators who are taking this. That's where it's really that'll free up the velocity for it, because I find that my thing, what creates the friction is having to create and wrap my mind around taking something all the way. And whereas I can come into, and I think about the other collaborations that I have, that I'm able to make a big impact without me being the one who's or my organization is doing the actual integration. I'm being integrated into an existing system. And it's really that's just what brings me the greatest joy, because I just purely get to do the things where I can make the biggest contribution.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating route, and the greatest danger is getting caught up in one part of the bigger game
Yeah.
and getting caught up in this stuff. What you want to do is you want to develop an immunity to stuff, and you want your greatest skill in this day and age is actually always being present with what's just available today.
Yes.
And not being bogged down into obligations that started 5 years ago.
Right.
Like you're being caught up in the machinery of what you created 5 years ago.
Right.
You're free of the machinery. You're free of the machinery. I mean, the machinery is working. It's
right.
The machinery is necessary so that it's pumping out automatic income.
Yes, and that's what it took me all that time to get down to my 417 hours in my base business. Right, I got, which I love the what the right word is, the symmetry or the just the correlation that 417 hours is exactly 20% of a standard 2,200 hour work year. Yeah, that it's just kind of, there's something elegant about that. I had no idea that that's what's happened, but I've actually gotten to the 80-20, which is I'm just doing the 20%. Yeah.
Yeah, but the big thing that the 80 shows you, and my sense and what I think I could offer is that this new model that I have of total creative economic integrator. If you're going to now commit yourself to other kinds of work in the future with the 80%, my feeling is you'll want to make sure that the total creative economic integrator is sort of the reality check of this is really what I want to do.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, so maybe you can help me get some clarity on that, because what I really want to do is I really want to be the architect, marketing architect or producer, or help people overlay and kind of guide the installation of the breakthrough DNA model, the 8 profit activators, into an organization where I can kind of guide and oversee that, and contribute all of the ideas for how it actually applies to their business, but have their internal team be the ones who are actually integrating or implementing all of it.
Yeah, just 2 insights that have really slammed me, I really got caught by surprise by this, was the number of the game changers who are actually cooperating with giant corporations. And I have never seen this, because my whole life has been bypassing corporations, finding niches and all sorts of opportunities that large corporations can't actually create or see. But what I'm seeing is that our game changers are, and what it is, it's not with a corporation, it's a particular very, very ambitious person inside a corporation who wants to make a big jump and can't do it with within the frame with the capabilities that are already inside the corporation, especially when it comes to innovation and marketing. They don't have that capability. So what they do is they look at this entrepreneur outside who's got cash confidence and has this bright new idea, and it's a handshake. It's not even a legal agreement. It's not a vendor relationship. It's just that because the person inside the corporation is actually trading their career like it's an entrepreneurial vehicle, and they want to either jump ahead in this corporation or they want to jump out to a better corporate situation. They aren't going to go. They aren't going to go entrepreneurial, for the most part. They just want to further their entrepreneurial career And they want to do it in such a way that it almost looks like magic inside the corporation. In other words, they don't want to make a big deal that they've got this secret sauce, this magic trick outside of the corporation that they're using to getting harder. And I'm just seeing it's almost like you're taking all the corporations in the world and you're reducing them to useful or useless elements, and you say, well, we could work with this useful element of the corporation or something like that, and I had never seen that. I mean, and it kind of reverses the whole model of how people think that things happen in the marketplace. So you start with a little corporation, you start with a little entrepreneurial venture, and then it offers itself, and then it gets bought out by a large corporation, and the people are pulled in, and and it's a classical thing of selling yourself out to a large corporation. Yeah. But here you don't. You just create a project that the corporation and you can actually create. Mm-hmm. And there's no legal tie, there's no financial tie except at the end. Mm-hmm. As you go forward, and you don't have to do anything except what you've been doing, and the corporation only has to do this one capability thing where they have the greatest growth potential. Yeah. And it totally changes the view of the relationship between outside entrepreneurs. And you don't go IPO with it. You don't bring in outside investors. All the assets, all the resources are already there. You just have to reconfigure them into 100 times collaboration. Yes. And this is the thing that I love, is that it's the best of both worlds. You get to stay being a pure entrepreneur, but you get access to scaling resources and scaling capabilities that you'd have to prostitute yourself to get those.
Right. Yeah, this is amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's so, I love when things kind of come together for clarity for me,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it's so funny. I was thinking as you were talking about what Jesse Itzler did. I mean, essentially that's a collaboration with NetJets, and then he ended up selling it back to them for hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. Which is really, fascinating, because he was taking a resource that NetJets had, which was unused capacity on their fleet of jets. Yeah, unused time.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was also dealing with their number one friction is that nobody wanted to buy part of a plane, but they would buy part of the time of a plane,
Yes.
And basically he just transformed them into kind of selling machines to selling time, and it's and time is where all the value is.
That really is. Well, Dan, we've said it all.
What a glorious Sunday activity.
I really enjoy it. It's such a fantastic thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, where are you going to be for Thanksgiving? Are you in Toronto?
Yeah. We've identified a venue that will serve a complete turkey dinner.
And, perfect.
And we're going to do that. But we're taking the day off. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, but I'll talk to you next Sunday. I think we're on for next Sunday.
Awesome. I will talk to you. I'll be there.
And I'll send the form on to you so that you can take a look at. Tomorrow I'll send you a blank one.
Okay.
The one I'm showing you has my sample copy on it. Okay. But you can actually use the space around it to get your ideas. But I'll send you. I don't have the blank copy on my laptop, but I'll send that to you.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Have a great week.
Okay. Bye.